I think there is something important that brings us maybe back on track here, which is that the depth of learning based on AI and insights you can get is already insane. It's only going to get crazier in the short term. We're talking about the next 12 to 24 months. And that's going to change how we work in SEO and marketing fundamentally.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have Kevin Indig back with us, a repeat guest. Kevin is an advisor to some of the world's fastest growing startups and has defined organic growth strategies for companies like Ramp, Reddit, Bounce, Dropbox, Hims, Nextdoor, and Snapchat. Kevin led SEO and growth at the world's leading e-commerce platform, Shopify, the number one marketplace for software, G2, and the number one developer company, Atlassian. Once a week, he sends the growth memo to 16,900 subscribers and regularly speaks at conferences around the world. Kevin, it's so great to have you back on the show.
It's even greater to be back.
So what have you been up to since our last conversation on this show? I know you've got a lot going on with the growth memo. I don't even think you had that going on at the time that we had our last conversation.
Definitely wasn't to the size as now. And I need to update the numbers in my bio. We're actually now at 18,400 subscribers. And it's a blast. I'm having such a great time. Since the last time that we spoke, a bunch of things happened. I think broadly, one of the biggest changes is probably AI. I'd be curious, Stephan, to hear how much you use AI, but I'm using it daily, like a lot. And so I think one of the biggest things that I've been up to lately is just a lot of original research into AI, Google AI overviews, how users engage with all of these things. What to learn from it, how to be visible. I mean, there's an endless amount of questions. It really feels like it's Google back in 2002, 2004, when you could tell, okay, there's something mighty brewing here, but you haven't yet figured out exactly, or maybe not everybody has figured out exactly how to succeed in that world.
Well, I don't think anyone's going to necessarily figure it all out, because I think we've passed that time where you can wrap your head around everything. It's just growing at such an exponential rate. I do think we're in an exciting time to be alive, where we can actually have one-person companies that are unicorn billion-dollar companies. But as far as like getting your head wrapped around what's happening, even in just one area of AI, I think is a very tall order.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I want to double click on your point. I think most people are not realizing what's happening. The quality and gains from AI in terms of productivity, insights, knowledge, critical thinking that you can already get today for a measly $20 is insane. It is absolutely insane. So I don't want to get lost in that riff, but man, what a time. And I know you and I, we both have young kids, and I cannot imagine the world that they live in when they are, when they're in college, if they ever go to college, who knows, but in like 18 to 20 years, it's going to be nuts.
I can't even imagine colleges still thriving in the environment in 18, 20 years from now. It seems so antiquated. It's like trying to get buggy whip manufacturing to still be relevant in an era of automobiles. It's not going to work.
Yeah. Especially for the price tag of an American college. No offense, but man, those colleges have some,
It's not worth it. I've spent many tens of thousands of dollars on my education, and I didn't get value out of it. It was more just life experience, but I could have gotten that life experience by traveling the world instead.
I'm with you, man.
It's all great. It's all good. It's all perfect. Everything happens for a reason. And if I had to do it over again, of course, I would not invest all that money in going to University of Michigan and University of Wisconsin-Madison. Great schools, had a great time. Totally not worth it.
Well, as somebody who lives in Michigan now, I just want to officially say I appreciate it. But no, just kidding, man. I totally see where you're coming from. Part of me wants to go back to college because I had such a, not poor, but not a great work ethic back then. And my results showed that I was not that great of a student, and part of me wishes he could go back now. But the other part is like, nah, like what for? Like to your point, right? Like there was no subject matter skill that I learned. Maybe some meta skills, networking, and some other lessons. But yeah, I think there's many ways to get to those too.
Well, those meta skills, this crazy thing is the best and most important meta skills you don't learn in college. The problem solving, the negotiation, the how to kind of mind map and be productive and get into flow states. They don't teach that at college.
No, no. There's a huge gap. It's absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. And look, like um, I want to respect the people who come up with the curriculum and all that kind of stuff, but it's very outdated. It's very much a mass production, meaning individual skills are not kind of challenged and grown. And at the same time, it's very hard to do that with the current system, right? So I just think we need new systems. And it's very difficult to do that in the public sector, especially with the current kind of funding and support that most countries give. So I think naturally what's most likely going to happen is that the current schooling system will persist for quite a long time, but we're going to upgrade it with add-ons based on, I don't know, AI tutors or real tutors or, like extra curriculae. But I think, to your point, more and more people, if not already, are going to think twice or thrice about, do I want to make that investment in college, especially when they might have a natural aptitude for something that is not a knowledge worker job, right? Like there's this kind of expectation for everybody to go to college these days. But some people might just be brilliant with their hands or in other ways. And I think as a society, we need to figure out how to reward that more instead of squeezing everybody into this college system, and especially in the US where people take on massive debt that some of them can never pay back. And they end up in these kind of weird life situations. Anyway, didn't mean that like so big and so off track here, but I think there is something important that brings us maybe back on track here, which is that the the depth of learning based on AI and insights you can get is already insane. It's only going to get crazier in the short term. We're talking about the next 12 to 24 months. And that's going to change how we work in SEO and marketing fundamentally.
And this has been something espoused by Tim Ferriss for literally decades now, and it's the low information diet. And now there's a book just out from Pat Flynn, Smart Passive Income, and I was going to interview him, but my wife Orion, who did the interview instead because I was terribly sick. So that episode, by this time that this airs, this particular episode that we're conversing in right now, that Pat Flynn episode will have aired, and his new book is called Lean Learning, and it's all about how to not overwhelm yourself by trying to keep up with everything that's happening and go deep down these rabbit holes that it doesn't serve you. It ends up getting you stuck. I loved what you were saying, or you were alluding to this whole thing of having AI tutors helping people through their schooling and their education. There's a great book, one of my favorites. It's a science fiction novel. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called The Diamond Age. And the subtitle is A Young Lady's Illustrated Primer. It's in the coming era of molecular nanotechnology. So after the big AI innovations come the nanotechnology innovations. And when nanomachines can self-replicate, then that will be as big of a tectonic shift for humanity as AI.
Man, I can't even imagine what that's going to be like and all the things that are possible.
Well, now you can, because you can get this book by Neil Stephenson. It's a great book. It's a really fun read. Or if you like to listen instead, get the audiobook. And it will give you a glimpse into the near-term future of maybe 15 years from now, when we are full on in this world of molecular nanotechnology. So this protagonist, this lady, this young girl in the book, she has a best friend, a mentor, a tutor that is an AI, and it's a device that really saves her bacon over and over and over again. It's just a really fun read. And imagine, for example, a world where instead of you go sit in a movie theater and passively partake in the experience, kind of consume the experience, what if you instead interactively shape the experience? These are going to be movies of the future where you are going to be full immersion in the movie, changing the movie by your decisions and your actions. Haptic technologies and visors and all these sorts of things that make this fully immersive 3D, and you change the plot line. And the actors are interactive and change based on what you do and say and decisions you make. That's the future. One of the many things that's going to really transform incredibly, completely from what we've been experiencing.
Yeah, I can see it. I can absolutely see it. I think I forgot the name, but somebody's working on an adaptive video game that will um, change based on how much attention you pay. And I think there's a scary component in there as well. One realization I came to recently is that people thought the impact of social media on your attention span or apps like TikTok and YouTube and whatnot is bad. Wait until AI really hits the masses, and you could argue maybe it already has, but the ability of AI to hit just the right buttons for you in terms of what interests you and how to keep your attention, all that kind of stuff, that is already next level. And so there's all sorts of crazy apps already spinning out that are incredibly adaptive to your personality and style and topics that are interested in you. And now with new memory features, all of that is being taken to next level. So I'm not surprised to hear concepts of adaptive movies and storylines and plots. I mean, heck, even Nvidia, I think on their big demo day or this like crazy, event that they're throwing up in this like sports stadium somewhere in the valley. I think last year they showed how LLMs impact gaming NPCs, so non-playable characters, and how they allow them to basically create a new story every time you play the game. So yeah, crazy possibilities on entertainment and how to keep yourself busy. And it seems to me already that one of the important skills that we need to think about is how do you calm your brain down and give it a break? How do you bore yourself to let all of that sink in and like not be on these constant dopamine highs? And how do you not atrophy your thinking, especially your critical thinking completely, as AI is already that good?
So those dopamine hits, the addiction, I was going to chime in on what you were saying about, this adaptive technology. I wouldn't call it adaptive. I'd call it hyper addictive. This is so dangerous for society. I don't know if you've seen the movie Wall-E. It's I think it was a Pixar cartoon, and these people are sleepwalking through life. Like they're getting shuttled around in their little, I don't know, contraption that this little hovercraft thing, so they don't have to even walk. So they don't have to exercise, and they're constantly consuming junk food and junk media, and feeding that addiction for novelty and sleepwalking through life. And this is a real risk for humanity.
Yep, it absolutely is, man. And I think we're already seeing some of that today, where people escape into like online worlds on some of these social apps, and so yeah. Anyway, man, it's I think it's like this tough philosophical question goes back to what is my purpose? What do I want to do in life? And when you're not constrained anymore by your circumstances, for example, your social economic upbringing or your income or where you live. um that's a tough call, man. That's tough. I think, there constraints can, don't get me wrong here, man. I'm not advocating for people to be kind of imprisoned in their circumstance. But what I'm saying is, it's an incredibly hard question to answer what you want to do with your life when you can do everything, right? There is so much as too many options that overwhelm you.
It's the paradox of choice. Right? If you're familiar with that concept, and there's a book about it, and I think didn't Kahneman win a Nobel Prize or something for his work in that area? Anyway, so what is your purpose?
My purpose, man, the way that I get there is through this concept of zone of genius. I'm not sure if you maybe have spoken about that in our last conversation, but essentially, what is the work or thing that I do where I feel completely in flow, but the returns are exponential as well? It could be money returns or just impact in different ways. There's a couple of ways to interpret this, and I've come to the realization that for me, it's three ways of thinking that are my zone of genius. One is analytical thinking, the other one is critical thinking, and the third one is holistic thinking. So essentially, understanding all the parts of a piece, seeing the bigger picture, and then critically question how they belong together. Um, that is kind of my purpose, and like to apply these skills, but also then to share the outcome of that with others. And I think I'm doing a lot of that with the Growth Memo newsletter, some of the other content that I share. So even though of course I benefit from that financially, sure, but so much more I benefit from doing that through fulfillment, right? Through like really enjoying that stuff, man.
And so, how do you get meaning out of your life? And I know this is really kind of out there, not a typical marketing speak interview, but we know each other, and you've already been on the show, and you've already dazzled them with your technical genius and everything. I want to get behind the brilliance to like what actually drives you and how you kind of interface with the infinite intelligence, the universal Google, and not just the google.com and the various algorithms out there, but there's a bigger picture, what Elon Musk might refer to as a simulation or a video game of sorts, is this illusion of reality we're experiencing. I'm curious to hear how do you make sense of all this and extract value and meaning out of these daily interactions that you have with your clients, with your newsletter subscribers, with folks that you talk to when you're at conferences, all that.
Yeah, totally, man. I will say, I think meaning comes from several parts of life. It's not monocausal. I think there's, meaning that I get, for example, from my daughter and my wife. There's meaning that I get from pushing myself in the gym and or maybe in sparring, right? When there's a intimidating opponent or an intimidating number of weights to lift, and you overcome that, and you feel amazing afterwards, right? Or you reap the benefits of hard training. So there's lots of kind of meaning that I get even from enjoying life. I think that's often under discussed, but I get meaning from enjoying some amazing food sometimes, or from travel. But to bring that back to work, because I think that's kind of the most relevant for the conversation. I would break it down into an insatiable curiosity that I have, and big satisfaction from learning new things that are relevant for me, of course. It's not just about like random accumulation of knowledge, but relevant knowledge. And then applying that. So it's really, I get so much meaning out of, here's a situation, what could be some options, what could be ways forward, how can we maybe find ways forward that are creative or non-obvious or undiscovered, and then implementing that and seeing how it works, right? So you can call that, it's almost like a lab scientist. I call it advisor. You could call it, a learner or whatever. But doing those activities, following those threads, incredibly rewarding for me. And if I were to look back, I think there's this interesting exercise a lot of people do where They look back at their life, imagining they were on a deathbed and look back. And, if I just focusing on work now, right? If I think back about these types of experiences and the things that I learned and tried, it feels pretty complete to me.
Everything unfolds the way it's meant to. It's all perfect.
It's all perfect. Look, you can see it as perfect. I totally agree with you, right? You can, whatever happens in your life, and I've been incredibly lucky, right? So I want to acknowledge that. But whatever happens in your life, you have an option to see it as a lesson or as a terrible tragedy. Now, sometimes, of course, look, like tragedy absolutely happens. I don't want to downplay people's experience, and I don't want to say, oh, there's something beautiful in everything. Some things are just 100%. Sorry for the swearing here. I hope that's we don't have to record that. But some things are 100% terrible. But most things, there's at least a tiny lesson in there, or a tiny appreciation in there.
Absolutely.
And that gives me comfort, even in this like whole conversation we have about AI and the crazy futures, I get a lot of comfort in knowing that there's something to be learned in almost everything and something to be appreciated about almost everything. So it's a matter of perspective to keep it philosophical.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite concepts in Judaism is that everything is a blessing. And that means that there are two kinds of blessings. There are the revealed blessings, the obvious ones, and the yet to be revealed blessings. So if it doesn't look like a blessing, trust that it is and that it hasn't been revealed yet. And then you can kind of meditate or contemplate that situation, that tragedy or whatever. And I've had plenty of tragedies. I've had a really terrible childhood, but it was all perfect because it made me the man I am now. And I wouldn't take that away. I wouldn't change that for anything.
That's super powerful.
You're not given more than you can handle because you're still here. And I made it through. And I remember once my uncle told me, I can't believe you're actually alive. Like that you made it through your horrible childhood alive and not in prison and not dead.
Wow. That is powerful.
Like, thanks, uncle.
So what would you say is your purpose?
My purpose, an ambassador of spirituality, an ambassador of the light. So I help people get closer to God.
What would you say is preventing most people from getting closer to God? What's holding them back?
A lot of limited thinking and belief systems and a lack of intentionality. So let me give an example to bring it back to something very tangible, very specific, and very marketing related, and how this can apply to even that. If you did this little experiment, so humor me, try this if you will, and I'm saying not just you, Kevin, but you, listener. Next time you use AI, so ChatGPT or Claude or whatever your go-to LLM is, use it with intention. So connect to God, ask, or your higher power, however you frame it in your mind, and ask for guidance, assistance, help. It's just another interface to the unseen world. Right? Everything is an interface to the unseen world. So you might catch in the glimpse, like as in the corner of your eye, a glimpse of a particular repeating number sequence that you see constantly. And it's just so weird. It happens over and over and over again. That is another interface to the unseen world. So AI is an interface to the unseen world. So if you approach it with intention and a high vibration, you will get different output. And you will be amazed with what you get out of the images that you have ChatGPT create for you, the plans that you have it create, the brainstorming exercises that you do together with it. It will blow your mind way more than if you just keep doing what you've been doing.
What I like about that is it reminds me so much on what you spoke about earlier, which is Daniel Kahneman's idea of system 1 and 2. So when I hear intentionality, what I hear is, to not be on autopilot, but to like truly think about, okay, what the way that I'm spending my time right now, or the thing that I'm doing right now, how does that fit into what I want to achieve, my vision, my values? I mean, you don't have to, not everything has to be aligned with the values, right? But time is very scarce and it's usually less than you think. So the thing that you're doing right now, is it in alignment with what you're actually trying to get to? And to intentionally switch to out of autopilot or switch autopilot off, there is a value to autopilot as well, right? There is a value to just passively, randomly exploring and maybe not having a goal and just trying things out. But to your point, being intentional about when you pick which to, I think that's incredibly powerful because we default to being on autopilot and just randomly doing things. And whether you want to see that from a productivity perspective, right, or from a spirituality fulfillment perspective, I think there's a lot of value in that lesson.
Yeah. It's funny how I just realized when you brought up Kahneman, I misquoted and I was referring to the paradox of choice, but I actually meant Barry Schwartz and Kahneman came out. So we ended up going off on that little tangent about Kahneman and system one, system two thinking unintentionally, but everything is intentional. Everything does happen for a reason. So funny. Anyway, so let's talk more about how, on a practical kind of boots on the ground sort of way, people, our listener, can get more value out of AI in whatever their work is. If they do SEO, if they do pay-per-click, if they do social media marketing, if they do analytics or overall kind of marketing strategy, doesn't matter. They're probably, hopefully, using AI on a constant, at least daily basis. I know I do. And the value I get out of it is enormous. So how do you get even more? How do you 10x that value with some simple strategies and tactics?
Yeah. So I want to talk about Google specifically. There's some interesting research that I've done that I want to share with you and the listeners. Generally, before we jump into that, I think some of the best rewards from AI are in the meta thinking realm that you and I were talking about before. So instead of saying like, hey, do this thing for me, help me get to the outcome, you want to ask AI for help along the way. So instead of saying, for example, and you can do this, right? And the results are getting better, but I don't think that's where the biggest leverage of AI is. But you could say, hey, write me this article about X. So you can upload it on your blog and you can get some search engine traffic. And then, maybe some of those turn into customers. Sure, you can do that. But what if instead you say, hey, look, I have this idea for an article X. How can I make this uniquely valuable compared to anything else that's out there? What are some interesting ways that I haven't considered to make this even better? Or here's my target audience. Here's what I'm trying to achieve. Here's who I am. Now, show me different options that I can take this article idea to, or maybe different ways to repurpose it, or maybe different ways to visualize it. So the biggest value is much more in the how than the what, I would say, and the final outcome. So that's how I use it all the time, as a thought partner, as a way to fill in my gaps, and as a way to think beyond my horizon. And of course, there's a research aspect of it. It's getting really, really good. Deep research, amazing. But this like better thinking aspect, that's where the real 10x is.
Yeah. Are you investing the $200 a month in that level of service with ChatGPT?
Not yet, but I will say that O3 is so good. I'm like debating with myself. I'm currently paying for ChatGPT and Claude, both the $20 a month. I had tried out Gemini Pro, but wasn't convinced. And then I'm paying for, I think, 2 or 3 more tools that are AI driven. My experience lately with O3 in the last, 7-10 days, if somebody told me, hey, there's an O4 and you pay $200, I would be in right now.
I mean, it's incredible, the advances and how it just seems to be accelerating. But that's the nature of the law of accelerating returns, right? So it's Moore's law, it's Metcalfe's law, all combined, and thus you're getting this hockey stick graph of improvements, regardless of which platform you're talking about. And one thing I would caution our listener about is trying out these Chinese AI platforms. It might be a shiny object that looks really enticing, but that's directly connected to the CCP.
Yeah, I'm not using DeepSeek at all. I haven't even tried it out. And I will also say, look, like to try to be objective here, I'm also not a big fan of Grok, right? I also have my concerns about Elon Musk's AI model. Don't want to get too political, but based on how he kind of reshaped Twitter and some of the kind of systemic um, prompts, if you will, that he injected in the Twitter algorithm, uh, don't make me very confident that that's not also the case about Grok, right? And you will look like you can argue that every model is biased, probably is.
Every model is biased, yes.
Yeah. Every model is biased, every human is biased. Again, can make this very philosophical, but I will say that the degree of bias that is aligned to democratic values is probably much lower in something like DeepSeek and maybe even Grok than, say, a Gemini, ChatGPT, or Claude, or Perplexity. So I will say that. But to bring it to marketing, I think there's some like we're obviously facing the biggest disruption of the biggest marketing channel that ever is so far, and that is Google search. And it's just fascinating what's happening there and how it's changing user behavior or not changing user behavior. So there's a whole kind of um, list of new insights that I was luckily able to gain. And dude, if you game about it, I would love to jump into that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool, awesome. Okay, so to set the context, I was incredibly fortunate to run the first ever user behavior study about how people actually interact with AI overviews, together with Eric Van Buskirk from Clickstream, and kindly sponsored by DoFollow and Zofu, where we looked at 69, so almost 70 actual people in the US across different ages. And we recorded their screens. We recorded what they were commenting about the user behavior and their perception. And we recorded, we basically gave them 8 different tasks to solve. And we recorded how they're solving them and what they do along the way. This is incredibly fascinating. We're talking about over 300 task completions and over 550 individual annotations that we evaluated. And by the way, there were over 400 encounters of AI overviews. So the sample size of this user behavior study is small, but the qualitative insight is incredibly big and valuable, in addition to all the quantitative stuff, right? So, of course, I and other people have looked into what does, what do referral clicks look like from AI overviews, or how many AI overviews does Google show, and this and that. Like, there's a lot of fascinating quantitative data that's incredibly valuable, but this is the first ever user behavior study of how people qualitative interact with that stuff, and it's incredibly fascinating. If it's okay, I would go into some of the insights that we figured out.
Please.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this was the most fascinating one is probably how people click in and outside of the AI overviews, right? And like, I've seen it in my clients. I've seen an organic traffic decrease of 20 to 30% on average across most industries. And so what we saw in this user behavior study is that the number of outbound clicks collapses on desktop from about 28 to 11%. So that's less than half. And on mobile, we're going from 38 to 21%, so about a third. So absolutely significant impact on how people click. So the reality is most people just don't click anymore, or more and more people don't click anymore, to be precise here.
Yeah, one of the things Rand Fishkin's famous for talking about a lot over these last few years has been that we're heading towards a zero-click future. Nobody clicks through from Google search, and so your website doesn't get any traffic.
Yeah, that is absolutely what I'm seeing in the data as well. And to be fair, AI overviews are not yet completely rolled out for all queries. Sundar Pichai, CEO of Alphabet, did say that that's the goal on the latest earnings call, right? AI overviews are still evolving. They're changing over time and morphing. And Google is also showing what they call AI modes, which is basically a conversational interface very similar to ChatGPT, right? So what we're seeing today, 50% drop in click-through rate on desktop and 30% click-through rate drop on mobile, that's just the beginning. That's going to get more. And that's where I totally see this kind of zero click world becoming true that Rand Fishkin envisions. And what's also interesting, this is the second insight that really surprised me here, is that it's very generational. So what we actually saw is that young people, we're talking about, below the ages of 35. There obviously there's multiple demographic categories, right? But very broadly, there is 18 to 35, and then there's maybe 35 to 50, and then 50 plus. We have several categories, but I'm just like broadening that up a little bit for the purpose of our conversation. And what we're seeing is that younger people below 35, they're much more likely to engage with AI overviews. In fact, like they're all about AI overviews and featured snippets. They're also much more likely to engage with Reddit. So very interesting, and probably jumping ahead here, but this is insight number 3. A very interesting behavior that we observed is that especially young people will engage with the AI overview. They will read it, skim it, and then they will often validate some of the answers with Reddit. So they're getting the AI answer, and then they're validating that with some human experience. Whereas people above the age of 50, they're significantly more likely to engage with the classic organic search results. And so to draw a line on these 3 insights for now, what that means for marketers is that, first of all, demographics are critical to understand, right? We're often thinking about user intent and personas and what are people actually trying to achieve. We also need to factor in demographics to understand how important it is to optimize for organic search results. We also need to factor in demographics to understand how important it is for us to be visible on platforms like Reddit, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. Younger audiences are much more have a much higher affinity to validate and engage with those as well. And to the point that you made earlier, we also need to redefine the metrics and numbers and mental models that we have about organic search.
Yeah. So that's interesting that what you've described here makes a lot of sense. And as somebody who is in that the later category of over 50, I tend to gravitate to the regular organic results much more so than the AI overviews. And I'm not adding the word Reddit to any of my search queries, except if I'm trying to figure out some searcher behavior that I'm analyzing for a client. So what you said definitely resonates for me, and I think it goes a lot deeper than that too. Like, you need to understand a lot more about your demographics and psychographics of your constituents. Otherwise, you're flying blind.
You absolutely are. You absolutely are. And I think to make a meta point here, right, a broader takeaway from the study, for the last, I would say, 10, if not 20 years, marketing has become synonymous with performance marketing. Because channels like Google, YouTube, Meta, right, like all of these platforms, advertising on them has become so incredibly impactful and so effective that that's what most marketing focused on. And in the process, we often forgot to actually talk to our target audience. And if there's one way to counteract all this impact that we're seeing and some of the negative implications, is to go back to talk to people and to understand your target audience deeply. And I think demographics is only the tip of the iceberg, right? But like, hand on your heart, how many people, how many marketers actually talk to customers and non-customers? I know, everybody pretends that they do. Stephan, the like 99% of people are just not doing it. I see it in my clients. I see it in the people who I talk to. I see it in the people I poll on social media. It is time to actually talk to humans to optimize for AI. I think that's one of the interesting contrasts and paradoxical things or takeaways for me from this study.
Yeah. I mean, that's really, I think, the future for humanity is that you have to be human in order to outdo or outperform the AIs. Otherwise, you're just a commodity like the AIs are. So if you can be more human on stage or in a LinkedIn post or in a YouTube video or in a Zoom conversation with a prospect, then you're more relatable. You're more, I don't know, somebody worth commiserating with and collaborating with, and not just an algorithm.
Yes, That is absolutely the case. And I can also see that in the actual results of the study in the form of trust. So trust is something that we maybe talk about when we talk about EAT, right? Expertise, experience, trustworthiness, authority, or authoritativeness. But it doesn't get nearly enough attention. So what we saw in the data is that there's a two-step filter that the majority of searchers apply to the search results, whether it's in the AI overviews or outside. And that two-step filter is trust and relevance. So before even checking whether the results are relevant to people, and I'm talking, when I say results, what I mean is the citations and the blue links or SERP feature links, they first check, do I trust this result? Do I know this domain? Do I know this brand? And do I trust it? And then does it seem to provide to me what I'm actually looking for? That is, I think that's a profoundly new insight. We're not paying nearly enough attention to this trust factor because it surfaces questions about how can we reinforce trust in our brand. And I think what it kind of to like the second order effect of this is we need to think so much more about how to influence users before they even search. Right? This is the kind of the missing link, the fallen bridge between social media and SEO. Social media and advertising is a profound opportunity to influence people before they have a search intent. And then when they search and they see our brand and they recognize it because they might have seen it in some social content or an ad, that's critical because that's when you become part of the choice set for users. Then it's all only about making sure that you actually have what they're looking for. But without being recognizable, memorable, trustworthy, you're not even visible for people.
With kind of old iterations of EAT and talking about trustworthiness is really about link quality and the trust quality, trust scores of the linking sites that you have acquired through your link building. That's really old and I think outdated. Really, it's more metaphysical these days, and it's about being impeccable with your word, which is actually one of the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. This huge best-selling self-help book, The 4 Agreements. I don't know how many millions of copies sold, but a lot. And the first of the 4 agreements is be impeccable with your word. So if you are impeccable with your word, then you garner trust. You earn and deserve trust, and that trust will be present in the search results, in the AI recommendations that you get through various platforms, and in other metrics. It's a very woo-woo way to look at building EAT, but I think it's the future.
Yeah, look, another one of the 4 agreements is don't make assumptions, right? And that goes directly back to what we're talking about here. The assumption that we're making way too often is that, oh, this keyword has a lot of search volume and we think it's good for, like, we should go after it because it's relevant to us. Let's invest time and money to create content for it. That's an assumption. And so the way to disambiguate that, the way to turn from an assumption into knowledge is by actually talking to your audience and seeing, hey, do you care about this? Do you search for that? What are some of the biggest problems that we can help you solve? How do you, like, what platforms do you consider when gathering knowledge about these things? All of those are critical for us to succeed, whether it's in the AI world broadly on ChatGPT and Co, or it's in Google AI overviews, because the human element that you were calling out, that is so right, is critical in how people make how people make choices.
Something else I want to point out, it's not really marketing related, but I think it's really about being a good human. It's kind of a sub point about being impeccable with your word. And I learned this actually from Teddy Saunders. He posted about this on social media. He learned it from reading that chapter of the 4 agreements on being impeccable with your word. And he said that this was really a profound lesson he got from this. And it's gossip is black magic.
Yeah, it's interesting. One book that is so close to the 4 agreements to me is the book, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. related to that book are some books from Gay Hendricks, like The Big Leap, etc. And all of these
Mhm.
books make the same point, which is that, to your point, right? Gossip is black magic, um, and it's a way to disconnect from people. Also, it's easy to do, but it only creates drama, and there's so much to be gained from actually talking to the people you gossip about and being open with them. That doesn't mean you need to be unkind to them, right? But if you have a problem with someone, you resolve it with them. It can be incredibly powerful for not just you, but also the other person. It can be connecting. It can be less exhausting for you, man. Uh, I don't know how you feel, right? But man, there's so much that can exhaust you these days. And I think some of the hidden things that there um, are kind of all these energy drainers, like gossiping or like missing integrity from not being impeccable with your word, and then kind of subconsciously um, feeling shame or guilt around that. And in the same way, I think I just think that a lot of people are kind of getting very exhausted from that.
Yeah. And a related quote I think is good to point out, and I think it's applicable to marketing, not just to life. But it's before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig two graves. So when you're gossiping or you're hating on somebody, you are creating a lot of spiky, dark energy, directing that to the person in the unseen world. And you are damaging yourself energetically in the process too. So you are digging two metaphorical graves as you are gossiping or hating on somebody. So certainly don't do that in your marketing. Some people like to stir up controversy and sling mud around, and that is incredibly damaging. And there is karmic blowback from that for sure.
Absolutely, and it kills trust, which we learn is important, and also
Yeah.
important to your brand, right? Like I think part of that is even just stealing from others, right? Stealing content, stealing ideas, and look, like you can remix ideas and stuff. Like I'm not saying every idea should be patented, right? But I see a lot of stealing on social media of other people's hard work, and I think for the people who steal, this is actually incredibly exhausting. And to your point about digging two graves, right? Like I don't know, like how that integrity lack or leak, better said, um, how that reflects back on their energy. So I totally agree
Yeah.
with you.
Certainly not good, but it's never been easier to do this because the LLMs just completely facilitate this and augment your ability to do it. So if you don't want to cite your sources, or you want to spin something up and call it your own, even though you didn't write it and it's none of your original ideas, it's incredibly easy to snap your fingers and have that done in a heartbeat and then publish it online. And that's just inviting yourself to a whole lot of metaphysical blowback as well, I think. I know we're out of time, so if our listener wants to learn more from you, maybe subscribe to your growth memo, Substack, maybe they want to dig into the study that you did on AI overviews, where should we send them?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So you find the growth memo on growth-memo.com. There is another newsletter that's also called Growth Memo, and they're called the Growth Memo. So that's not me. That's somebody else, but uh, growth-memo.com. Otherwise, Kevin Indig on LinkedIn. You'll find me wildly posting and promoting all the stuff that I'm up to lately. So yeah, appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kevin. You're up to some really cool things, and thank you for taking the time to share your brilliance and your insights on the show.
Thank you too. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for also coloring outside of the boundaries of marketing. I feel like it's very refreshing and also very energizing for me. So that was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, thank you, listener. Go out there and color outside the box in your world, and we'll catch you in the next episode. In the meantime, have a fantastic week.